Thank you, everybody, for coming out and joining our men's breakfast fellowship ministry here this morning. It's good to see everybody. I thought, well, that's my name out there that I was going to be talking. I figured it would be like a big crowd or be like a real tiny crowd. So it's nice to see a really decent showing here today. And thanks for my guests for showing up and to listen in on this. It's wonderful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about financial planning, and then we're going to open it up to some questions, Q&A afterwards. And so anyway, first of all, I'm going to just start off. My wife sent me a little verse this morning, a couple of them actually. And she said, "There's a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes, but what are they among so many?" John 6:19. And then, "Little is much when God is in it. Labor not for wealth or fame. There's a crown, and you can win it if you go in Jesus' name." And then another one, she said, one more, stirred her thoughts. Life is frail and fragile. So come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we shall go into such and such a town, spend a year there doing business and make a profit. You have no idea what your life will be like tomorrow. You are a puff of smoke that appears briefly and then disappears. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wills it, we shall live to do this or that. But now you are boasting in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So for one who knows the right one to do and does not do it, it is sin. James 4:13-17. So anyway, that's what my wife sent me this morning. I thought I'd share that with everybody here today. So all the stuff that we do in our planning, it's kind of like a little bit like that. We make plans. We don't know what tomorrow brings, and but we still need to plan for tomorrow. I think that's a stewardship principle. And the other thing that came up, I had a little communication with our pastor, and he says, "I really wish I understood investing better." So I sent him Ecclesiastes 11, "Cast thy bread upon the water, for thou shalt find it after many days." And it went on and on. It's a big verse. So he's thinking, I don't know what he's thinking. He's like, wow. Then they said, "I'm going to send you the short version." And he's probably reading it and says, well, there's no money left in the short version. So this would be the ideal life. And so basically, that verse from Ecclesiastes is talking about diversifying our portfolios, our investments, the things that we do in our life. We should have a variety of things. And that goes true with investing, because we do not know which one is going to do right. And there's various asset classes that we incorporate in our clients' portfolios. And then some other principles and that we should endeavor to live by. And I press this with, you should start this when you're young or whenever you find out about it. So, because we're all different ages, or we should influence people that are perhaps younger in our lives. So, first one is one wife, one house, tithe 10%, endeavor to give another 10% away. We're called to do that in the Bible. Save 20% and spend the rest. Start young or whenever you find out about it. The other thing, you ideally find the smallest house in the best neighborhood. That was advice I was given back many, many years ago by the president of, what was it? I think it was National Trust at the time. So that was his plan. He was from Toronto, so get the best little house in the best neighborhood. You'll be fine. You'll make money. You won't be overburdened with mortgage payments. And then, so these are some thoughts on how to optimize your life. And I also added, it doesn't hurt to find a good church to call your home. And I think many of us here have found a good church to call home. And that pretty well summed it up. And then I added, have lots of kids, because they're the real treasure. Amen to that. So, the next thing I want to do in your handout is, I was on a journey the last few years, and I got what we call our Kingdom Advisor, Certified Kingdom Advisor designation. So I joined a group that started, basically the headquarters was in the States. Ron Blue started this organization a number of years ago, and they have the designation called a CKA, Certified Kingdom Advisor. So we basically look at how we take care of our clients from a biblical perspective, stewardship things. And one of the things we had to do was create a stewardship statement. So first thing on your handout is my stewardship statement, some of the principles that we endeavor to impart with our clients, live ourselves, and let that filter through our lives and everything we do. So you can just read through that. At the top, it says, use God's given resources, our time, our talent, our treasure, the truth, and our relationships to accomplish God-given goals and objectives. We're to recognize there's 3 financial decisions making principles. There is no independent financial decision. So what you do here affects here, okay? The longer term the perspective, the better the financial decisions today. If you knew you needed so much 10 years from now or 20 years from now or next week, you're gonna plan based on those goals. Could be, I'm gonna buy a house in 5 years. Well, to buy a house, you need to have a few things. Typically, you need a down payment, you know? So how do I get that down payment? Then, do I have enough money to afford the mortgage payment? So you gotta make sure that, do some calculations that you're on track. Maybe you find, I gotta get a bigger down payment so I can afford the house, to afford that mortgage payment. So just an example of thinking things through. And there's all kinds of stuff that one can do today that can enhance that. For younger people, or if you don't have a house now, there's the First Home Ownership Savings Account. Basically, people can put away $8,000 a year, get a tax deduction, then pull that money out when they buy their house that year. And so it's kind of cool, and they don't have to pay it back. Previous to that, we had home buyers plan where we could put money into an RSP and then pull that back, but we had to repay it. Basically, we had to wait a couple years, and then we could repay it over 15 years. So that was a wonderful thing to do if you had a couple buying a house. It used to be limited around $20,000 each, but now they've raised it to $60,000 each. So that's a large down payment for a house for someone that hasn't started one. There's other things. There's a whole bunch of tax credits associated with buying a house. So if you have children, grandchildren that are in that situation, it would be a very wise decision to find out where they're at, get involved and see if you can help, encourage them to do some of that stuff. The third thing talks about financial maturity is being able to give up today's desires for future benefits. So in my opening remarks here, I talked about saving 20%. So 20% just gets you to the goal faster. If you start at 10%, that will do it too. You just won't get there as quick. And if you have a long period of time, 10% of most incomes will allow you to retire quite comfortably. And the key is to do it early. And the longer you wait, the bigger the percentage needs to become. Okay? So that's sort of some highlights from the stewardship statement. You can just read through some of the other stuff, looks at different goals. On the second page, down sort of near the middle, just talks about what we do as a family office. So one of the goals basically said family office providing Omega stewardship. So where that term came up, that's a term that I coined a number of years ago, and really what we need as financial advisors, as people, is we need to manage our affairs like stewards would. We want to basically provide stewardship. So that's our goal, is to provide stewardship. And the Omega is kind of an interesting story, and I got that idea. You'd think it maybe came from church, but it wasn't. Joe Hudson from Burnbrae Farms, back in the early 90s, they developed the omega-3 egg. And I thought, wow. So the omega-3 egg at the time, and probably still pretty relevant, was the best egg on the shelf. It actually was good for you. They fed the chickens flax, and it changed the composition of that egg. So it basically became like a really good egg that helped your health. And the neat thing about it, it wasn't the cheapest egg in the store, but it was good for you. So I thought, you know what? I never want to be the cheapest option in the store. And I want it to be good for you. So that's where the Omega came through. So I tied the two together. I had a whole bunch of different slogans before that, but I shortened it up, 2 words. And then through that time, we've actually added another one called Improving Futures, because that's kind of what we do. At least we strive to do. So our family office helps families achieve life's major goals. We do that with tax-smart planning and investing, worry-free, which creates a worry-free retirement, education of our children and grandchildren, quality care for our parents, meaningful financial help for our loved ones, and a meaningful legacy. Those are the major goals. If you boil everything down, that's what everybody needs. All the rest is commentary. And in our firm, we basically provide a one-stop process-driven approach for retirement and income planning, personalized tax management solutions for individuals and business owners, and confidential wealth management services. So that's a little bit about our stewardship statement, and I would encourage you just to read that through. The next thing I want to look at, we're going to actually flip to the back. This is I think this is how the Hebrews write. They write from the back and move in to the middle. So, back in September last year, we had Rick Lovell, Director of Stewardship Group, come and visit us and spoke to many of us. These are my notes from that meeting. And hopefully you can read my writing. But I think it's always good to build on our foundation. So that was, I think, a pretty foundational exercise that we went through there as a church body, and our wives were involved with this as well. So he talks again about the principles of seed and bread and the save, sow, supply. And so these are my notes. So I just wanted to share that with you. As a refresher, he's talking about here, down at the bottom, save, sow, and supply. So just reread those. Then flip over. The next little section you're going to have is basically what we're going to call the investor profile questionnaire. So we're not going to do this today, but if you're looking for some homework to do, this is a good exercise. It will help you kind of understand maybe what your risk tolerance is in your investments. Okay? So it's a very short thing and 10 questions, and I encourage everybody to do it. You can answer them and keep that. If you ever meet with myself or somebody else, bring that profile with you. It will give you some perspective on your understanding of how investments work. The next section is a planner. So the firm that I'm currently with, Pete, have this planner, and in it is a whole, what we call basically tombstone information. It's the basics stuff that helps one create a file when you're working with an advisor. And it's a good exercise to go through. You're going to basically get all your identification in there, list all your children's names and birth dates, who your advisors are, what life insurance you have, what other types of insurance you have, what your investments are, what your liabilities are. When you go through that exercise, you'll be able to find out what your net income is and what your net worth is from a financial perspective. And there's a bunch of objectives on priorities and stuff. So it's a handy little thing to go through, and a lot of that information is stuff that we were working with a client, we would find that out so we can better help them. So those two documents are pretty well, those are standard things that we use in our practice, and they should be used everywhere. So the next thing that I want to come back to is basically page 2 of your handout. So this is So this one here has the 4 H's of financial wisdom. Okay. So page 2 of your handout. So this here is a resource that Ron Blue Institute put together, and they're part of a Kingdom Advisors. So there's basically 4 pages related to this, and it's talking about the 4 H's of financial wisdom. So it's from a Christian perspective, we have our heart. Basically that lays out the behaviors that we follow and our beliefs. If you look at that little heart, we have stewardship, Psalms 24:1 reference, contentment, Philippians 4:11-13, Hebrews 13:5. Then we have our faith, Hebrews 11:1-6, and wisdom, James 3:16-17, and James 1-5. So those are basically the things that matter to our hearts. So it's very important, we talked about the heart this morning in our prayer, that our heart is right when we are doing investments, when we're seeking guidance in our finances. The next thing is our health. What are our realities today? So it says in here, there's 5 simultaneous competing priorities for the use of our money, and God's word speaks to each. So, first principle, God owns it all. So, if God owns it all, He wants us to do special things with what we have. So we have to live, we have to give, we have to owe taxes. And I know that's a hard word to handle. One of our jobs is to help our clients love to pay their taxes. And we love their clients to save taxes. We probably love that more than the other. But we have to respect that we live in a society, and if we want to drive on the paved road, or a road at all, that takes funds that goes to different levels of government. So we have municipal governments, provincial governments, and we have federal governments. So they all have a little piece of the pie. And so when we're paying our taxes, we're paying to the government to provide all these services for us. You know, if there's a fire, the fire department shows up. Someone gets hits on the road, the fire department's showing up, the paramedics are showing up, and the police are showing up. Yeah? So if we didn't pay taxes, none of that stuff would happen because there'd be no money to do it. I doubt we'd have a society where just everybody just went to find out what was going on in the accident. Although you do see that from time to time. The other thing is what we owe. So we have debts. So we could have credit cards, we could just owe people money. We have a mortgage, car loan. So this is just an example of we're going to owe. And then the other thing is we get to grow. So the grow is part of the savings part of what we do. So our lives, God owns it all, and there's a piece of all these things in those equations. And our desire is to kind of figure that out. Ideally, we bring the amount we owe down to nothing, and we basically able to bring the amount that we give, and then ideally we should be making enough money or managing things that we owe some taxes, even if it's just $1. I kind of have a fun thing in our practice if we're trying to do some tax planning, and it's looking like they're not going to pay any taxes. Well, you know, if we did this and this and this, I can get it so you owe $1 or contribute $1. I think that just feels right, you know, because then you can go about your day and say, I pay my fair share. And it's only $1. And my guy is, you know, Rock Shores Financial, Tim Ross. I get a little jazzed when we can do that. Doesn't happen all the time. But anyway. And then the giving, we have to live, and we need to grow. So that growing, start young, 10% just does it. You know, you invest it, you diversify it. As you get older and older and you haven't started, that percentage gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And sometimes it becomes such a mountain, you just give up and you don't do anything. But we encourage you to think about those things no matter what stage you're at. And sometimes our living costs more than it needs to be. So I encourage us to be frugal so that we can be generous in other areas in our lives. So anyway, that's the health. So you have a good heart, you have a healthy attitude towards your realities, and then our habits. 5 biblical principles here. Give generously, avoid the use of debt, plan for financial margin. Basically, oh, I think that's going to cost $100. Things are really tight. You probably should plan for $200. And when it comes in at $75, wow, I'm ahead. But if it comes in at $125, you can at least finish the job that you're doing, right? So build in some margin. Or if it comes in at $200, oh, glad we saved enough for that situation. Set long-term goals. What are your long-term goals? I want to retire when I'm 50. Well, that's a hard one to get to. I want to retire at 60. I'm 60. I really can't retire the way I'd like to because I got all these living things I want to do. So I didn't prepare for this. So I violated the first rule, or 2 rules. Some of you know me, you'll know what those 2 rules were.
Where?
Were. 1 house. I had 3 houses. And 1 wife. Through my life, 3 wives. Not all at the same time, but now I've got the perfect wife, so I don't need a 4th wife. So I violated all these. I did not save the 10%. So now I'm doing the hard stuff, okay? Because I want to have a good life. And in the years I have ahead, you know? And don't get me talking about what those years are. Many of you know we have a new baby in our house. And so now I'm looking at how do I educate him, you know? And for me to be there, I gotta like put 20 years on that 60. So do the math, that's 80. And honestly, I'd like to be a little bit longer, so I read about all these people that are like 100 years old, and that's the goal, you know? Then I'm there, I can really have an influence, you know? So those are habits. The main one, spend less than you earn. Because the minute you do it the other way, you can be bankrupt in like 7 years. Okay? Because if you spend like 10%, 30% more than what you earn, you do that accumulate, it's going to work out not good for you. So learn to spend less than you earn. Okay? Good way to start, do a budget. Hey, what's coming in? What's going out? What can we change? You know, if it's not a healthy, are we tithing? If we're not tithing, oh, something's got to give. You know, I go to McDonald's every week, I'm going there 3 times a day. I'm spending $3 for coffee every day, 4 times a day. Start doing the math. Well, you know what? I don't need to do that. And that might allow me to pay my tithes. Or start a savings plan. The fourth 4 H's of financial wisdom is hope, tomorrow's promise. So it says here, changing habits to increase the margin is the only way to meet long-term goals and align our hearts and hope towards eternity. So, saving some with an emergency fund, so you need stability. So ideally, you all have some money set aside that if something breaks, you've got it. Some of you may have followed Dave Ramsey. First thing he suggests you do is get $1,000. Even if you have to sell something, get $1,000, put it in your pocket. It will elevate how you feel about yourself. Okay? And then if something comes up, oh, I really need that, I can buy it. Or an emergency comes up, boom. Next thing, create an emergency fund. You should have at least 3 to 6 months of income in the bank, in a savings account, earning a little bit of interest. Doesn't matter what the stock market does, you know. It doesn't matter what the government does. You've got it there in case transmission goes out of your car. Or whatever. You lose your job. You're out of work for a couple of months. So you need to have a savings account set up for that. There's a little margin meter there. It talks about surviving, living paycheck to paycheck. Ideally, we should not be living paycheck to paycheck. And we should not be struggling. able to make ends meet. We should have a surplus. So this little margin meter, we got to go from there, get stable, get secure, and create a surplus.
Question.
Yes.
Ideally, where are you supposed to be on this margin meter? Ideally.
Surplus. Ideally surplus.
Alright, realistically.
Secure.
Now, really good.
Where many are, we're in struggling.
Yeah.
And why are we in struggling? It's because we made some bad choices, or maybe we had too many kids. I don't know. I just recommend that, but if you spread them out over 30 years, it's not so bad. So, anyway, that's the 4 H's of financial wisdom. Now, when I first read this, I thought, the 4 H's. Has anybody here heard of the 4-H? Yes. Okay. So 4-H basically stands for head, heart, health, and hands. And it's basically the wisdom of 4-H. So it was kind of neat to see that in here. And it's 10-10. So I think I'm going to just wrap up my little presentation here for now. I don't want to overdo it. And I tried to kind of give you a basic idea of what the basics are in financial planning without getting into too many details, because I don't want to bore you. We got one leaving already. He's going to the washroom. I'll ask him. I feel better now. So I found out who was speaking today, and I thought, oh my God, that's me. I gotta get out of here. So I forgot to leave my wife her keys. So don't do that, you know. But thankfully, I built in a little margin so that I could be forgetful and take care of an emergency. Because for her, it was an emergency. For me, all my friends brought it to my attention. So I'm going to, one thing I want you to do before I kind of close things down, I want you to go to the front of this paper and take out the pen that you've got. And I want you to write your name in the top corner, whatever corner you want. You're all grown men. And put today's date on it, January 25th. And then take it home and pray about it. Show it to your wife if you have a wife, and maybe work through some of the exercises on that. Read it, study it. I think there's some value in this, and we just do that for me, and then we'll call it a day. You can keep the pen because we buy these, so we can give them out to people. And hopefully we'll get some calls from different people, you know, or email or calls. And you're good. So while I'm taking questions, I'm going to hand out some generous coin that you can enjoy. So who has the first question? Who has the next question?
How much this worth? Yeah.
Oh, I have help.
Is this real gold, Tim?
So we had one question. Oh, do you have any more questions, Otis? Yes, Hank.
When I look around this room, we're not looking at people starting the future. I'm looking around except for a handful of young fellows. We're looking at a group that have had their future. Presumably have money in the bank, have pension plans, whatever. I think what's good for you folks is not to look at what more can I save. Rather, look at those below you, your grandchildren, and encourage them to get an education, and then share this particular benefit with them. They're the ones that are going to really need it. For us, we have what we have, but there's no, I don't see any bigger goals for me than I already have accomplished. I've had a good life. I have two, my own kids, daughters, they're all millionaires today. Why? Because when my parents came from Europe, they said, we will work, you go to school. And they pushed me all the way through university. And that's what gave me a good life. So besides saving money, also I urge you to encourage those sons, daughters, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, encourage education. I think that's where the dollar is.
Thanks very much, Hank. Hank is right. As we get into our older years, we are the mentors. And we can provide good stewardship advice to those that are younger in our family. And it's sometimes money is not talked about, but it's a good idea to do that. I think it's awesome. And I should have put my phone on airplane mode. Someone tried to call me and it closed the recording loop, so that's okay. I missed some of that, Hank. But we got backup. Always have a backup, build some buffer in for your systems, right? So anyway, no, that's very important. Be there to mentor others. Sometimes, one of the things that I'm doing with our Certified Kingdom Advisors, study groups. And they've been a real blessing to me professionally and personally. And so once a week, we get together and we do a Zoom call, and we have a little program that we walk through and we study. And it is amazing to share that with other Christians, their thoughts about different topics. And it would be kind of the same idea. Get it there so you can to mentor others. And while you're mentoring others, while you're sharing, you're learning, you're teaching, if you get a spot where you can teach others, you will learn faster if you become a teacher. So there's situations where you can teach, you will learn the principles faster. Works in any discipline. At work, if you got to teach somebody how to use a piece of machinery, you become a very good machine operator because you know how it works. And if you're not completely sure how it works, you get pretty sharp in figuring it out because you're teaching somebody, and that's important, you know. Anyway, that's some thoughts on that. Does anybody else have another question other than Hank? Anybody fallen asleep yet? No one's left. There's one maybe going. So I will bring this to a close, and thank you again for your attention and for the opportunity to share some of these thoughts with you, and we'll leave it with you. And one last closing thing. Sometimes people wonder, he seems to have a lot going on. So now, there's a guy by the name of Kevin O'Leary. So he has a soul. But he's really out there, right, sometimes. But he actually has a lot of good advice. So one of the things that he says you should have something else on the side. So you have your work, your careers. But he says sometimes that can get boring. So you should have something that has a little passion in it for you. And for me, I have my little bit of a farm that I do. And then I also have my water beverage, my maple sap beverage, which actually was a 4-H project many years ago. And so it's kind of evolved. So it's my little passion project on the side. And I jokingly chat with different people. And I probably should have picked up golfing. I probably would have saved a lot of money. But I do enjoy sharing this drink with you here. And that's why I bring it to as many events as I can. And it's a good, wholesome drink. And it's good for the body and the soul. So anyway, that's a little bit of history. This was a 4-H project, and it's evolved over time. And anyway, I don't want to talk for another hour about it. I did promise everybody that we'd be wrapped up by about this time. So thank you. God bless you. Thanks again.
Drink, by the way.
It is a good drink, yes.